Welcome to another mediation training. My name is Inely Cesna, and today we're going to talk about managing power imbalances in mediation. And this is where psychology takes a little bit of its place in mediation because people have different personalities. So they come to the mediation table and they react differently to the conflict. Some people are more assertive, some people are more withdrawn. We're going to talk about these differences in personalities. And from a mediator standpoint, we really want to apply here our multi-partiality. We want to understand these different personality styles so that we can utilize tools that support them in having a leveled playfield in which to contribute to the mediation and to the resolution that they will find for themselves. So let's talk a little bit about these personality differences and how we can manage and deal with them in a mediation setting. We're going to go right into our slides here. And there we go. All right, let's talk about managing power imbalances and mediation. And I've talked a little bit about this in some other training. What constitutes a conflict? We have an issue, as you see by the dot on the screen here. And conflict means the issue is sitting there and we're going around and around and around that issue, creating discrepancies or disagreements or disturbances, but not really addressing the issue. And the goal is out of focus. Different people have different goals, they want different things, and it's out of focus, and we're not really getting anywhere. And what are the obstacles to the resolution of the conflict? What happens in the dynamics of this going around and around that creates an obstacle to resolution? And this is what Ken Cloak, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a wonderful mediator, a wonderful professor, and he has, at least this is where I first learned about this in terms of mediation, the physical forces that happen in this scenario. And those are physical forces, really. One is the centripetal force that is pulling us towards the middle. It's pulling us to face that obstacle immediately right on your face. And we'll talk about that personality style that represents that. The other one is the peripheral force that continues going around, creating the structure and the habits of going around. And the third is the centrifugal force that is pushing away from an actual goal. It's going away from the conflict. It's avoiding, it's evading, the situation. The personality types that represent all these forces happening in the conflict are the assertives. The assertives are the one that is pushing forward the agenda. They're right on your face, and they are not shy in asserting their positions. The peripheral are the compliance. Those are the ones that have somewhat of a regard to the authority. They want to follow the process. They want to follow the structure in order to resolve the conflict. And third are the withdraws, the ones that much rather not be there, that they would like to just make it go away, and then they withdraw in response to the conflict. So let's take a look at each one of these personality styles with a little bit more depth, starting with the assertives. So the assertives are the ones that are pushing forward their personal agenda. They do that with a lot of energy and drive. They can seem very dominating. They can utilize an intense tone of voice, like screaming or maybe intense, and making gestures and facial expressions, and just have a very on your face attitude. They move against the perceived obstacle. Actually, they move towards those perceived obstacles to eliminate them. They assert their presence, they take charge, they can be domineering. some of the qualities of this personality is that they are forward-moving energy. They have a forward-moving approach to their perspective. They take agency of what they want. They are action-oriented, and they influence, and often they can take control of the pace if we are not careful here. But those are very strong qualities. And as mediators, we want to manage the situation so that we can utilize those qualities in a balanced way towards a resolution. The potential is that they can energize problem solving because they come with so much energy and vitality to find a resolution. So they can bring the clarity and they can voice important issues. Now, the risk is that they can take over, right? They can overshadow other participants. They can try to manipulate the process. They can dominate to take control of the mediation. So we need to be very strategic in how to create, how to silence them, how to calm them down so that we can create a process during the mediation where things can take place. So let's take a look at how to deal with them. Those are very present, particularly in dependency court mediation. And so let's take a look, what can we do to help manage this personality style, to create that power balance, right, to balance the power. So first thing is we want to provide them with somewhat of a clear structure so they understand this is how we're going to work. So your explanation of the process, your time limits, them understanding how the transitions happen and how to take turns, maybe providing a written agenda if that's possible, or at least list to them the items, the process of the agenda that we have to go through. That can be very helpful. Another thing is your neutral reframing. So if they come with forceful and assertive and intensive language, the mediator can utilize a lot of neutral reframing to soften that language without, of course, losing the content of it, but soften that language in a way that it can be better absorbed. We can name and normalize differences. Just say, oh, I realize we have different communication styles here. We have different speeds. So let's create time for everyone to speak. Let me speak, let you speak. And so we start carving, more of a fairness into that process. We can empower others that are quieter. So really invite the opportunity for quieter voices to manifest in the conversation. We want to anchor shared goals, and those are usually the child's best interest, but it also, focusing on the greater good so that we can expand the perspective and allow a bigger context within which to create resolution. And invite vulnerability. How do you feel about this? What is really troubling you inside? What are you afraid of? Are you feeling rejected by this in any way? How can I support you in not feeling rejected? So you're really helping them step out of that assertive defense mechanism and come into the heart and allow them to relax that need to assertive to find really true support at the feeling level, at the interest level. So there are some tips. I had a mediation once I had several mediations with several assertive types. Some are easier to deal with than others. But in this specific one, I spent a lot of time listening, actually letting the air vent, letting that flux of assertiveness, come through. And we did that separately from the other party. So it allowed the opportunity to vent that out. And then with questions, as I just mentioned to you, what are you afraid of? What is the pain here for you? Where does this come from? How can I support you in finding resolutions here so that this pain doesn't grow, so that we can resolve and create a better future for your family, so that they don't have to have the same pain as you do. And so it allowed the questions like that allowed to open up the perspective in terms of the interests involved, and helped us come to more creative resolutions. So let's talk a little bit now about the compliance. The compliance are a lot quieter than the assertives. They usually align with expectations. They want to follow rules. They want to follow the process. They tend to move towards the perceived authority. Sometimes there can be, a fear of the court system or the authority or the professionals involved, but they want to make sure that they meet the expectations, either internal expectations or external expectations. So the potential in mediation is that they can bring a sense of stability and cooperation and respect for the process, and that's wonderful. But the risk here is that they can defer too much. They can allow the other party to have too much. This can potentially lead to their quick compliance in order to end the conflict, but then it becomes unsustainable. And so we want to make sure that when they commit, they really commit to something that they are willing to sustain. And we want to invite their voices into the table so that we can also relate to their pain, to their fears, what's underneath their positions, what's the level of interest and needs that they bring into the table, and help them verbalize that. So ways to create more balance with this kind of personality is to actively solicit their perspective, invite them into the conversation, and don't assume that their silence means anything. It doesn't mean that they agree just because they're quiet. Allow them to see self-advocacy in the dependency court mediation as their responsibility. They have the responsibility to advocate for themselves, for their family, for their children. Give equal weight to their security needs. They're often coming from a place of fear. And so understanding what that is, and setting the agenda so that that's covered. There may be other underlying issues, domestic violence or substance abuse or whatever it can be going on underneath. We want to be able to open the space and the psychological safety for that to come forward. We want to check for true consent. So often we can ask the parties to repeat the agreements in their own words to make sure that they really understand what they're committing with, and that they actually commit to that, and that's actually realistic and possible and feasible for them. We can address any fear of authority or any fear of retaliation. Sometimes they're afraid of retaliation outside of the process, and we want to make sure that that's addressed as well. We want to clarify our neutrality as a mediator. We want to clarify the court system is there to provide support, protection for the needs of the child and the family. And so that way we can support them in addressing whatever underlying fear that may be present here. And support their emotional courage. So giving them positive reinforcement for when they do voice things out, for when they advocate for themselves. There's an opportunity for positive reinforcement and an acknowledgement of those efforts that they bring forward. And that we start encouraging more of the behavior that we want to see take place in the mediation. All right, let's go to the next one, which is the withdrawals. The withdrawals are the ones that are coming inside. We bring our energy inside in order to maintain our autonomy, to have a sense of who we are in the conflict, and to avoid the overwhelm of the situation. So the core posture here is that, the centrifugal force, it's moving away from the conflict. It's trying to avoid the conflict. It's seeking the inner resources and retreating internally to manage the situation and to manage themselves as well. The qualities here is that they are introspective, they are reflective, they may need a little bit more time to process everything and to register what's happening. They're less likely to push their agenda in an aggressive way. The potential in mediation is that they can be very insightful because, there's this reflective nature that takes things in deeper levels as they stay silent and go inside. So when they do come into sharing, they can share really thoughtful insights with emotional depth and very interesting perspectives. So they can make great contribution in the mediation. But the risk here is that they will disengage. They will just silence themselves. They'll withhold that vital information instead of opening up. So inviting them to participate, allow the psychological safety for them to step forward, try to understand what's underneath, their silence, what's going on. What are the emotions? Is there a situation that it's happening that it's that forces them to withdraw in that way? So that's part of the withdrawals here. I had a mediation once with two parents, and the woman was very much compliant. She wants things to be in a certain way, and she had a very rigid schedule for their daughter. She wants, the dinner to be at a certain time, and the daughter to wake up at a certain time. It was very rigid. And the father wouldn't speak a word. He wouldn't say anything. It seemed that he was agreeing with the demands, the rigidity of the schedule that she was requiring and things like that. But eventually, I was able to come with him and say, okay, what's really happening? Why are you so silent? How do you feel about this? What's going on? What do you have to say? And then he shared with me after, some prep. It took him a little bit of time to relax, but eventually he shared with me that the mother had been molested as a child and had accused him of molesting the daughter. And there was forensic examinations done with their daughter in order to prove that he was innocent. And he was so disturbed by that situation that he couldn't even speak a word, that he preferred to stay silent. He couldn't even speak. And so, of course, the revelation of that allowed us to change a little bit the conversation. I could understand the interests underneath there and the trauma that the mother was coming from, and his resentment and his pain. And so it helped us really come into a place of greater engagement and greater understanding to come up with potential solutions. And here, one way to do that is, like I said, to proactively draw them in. So maybe, invite them. What's really going on here? Or how are you really feeling about this situation? Take smaller steps is also important because, the big step forward can create more of a withdrawal. So if you have a party that is quiet like that, to make sure that they feel safe. So we do little things at a time, small, safer steps at a time, allow them process to register what's happening, to process maybe breaks, if you will, or you can ask them, would you like some time to kind of sit with this before you provide an answer? How long would you like to do that? Do you have any questions? So ways of inviting them into the conversation. To balance emotions and facts as we talk to them, kind of always say, okay, what's underneath this? Okay, this is what here it happened. These are the facts. How do you feel about that? What are you afraid of? Is there anything else underneath there you would like to share? So we keep, inviting them in. Also confirming their consent and understanding by having them articulate their commitments in their own words, so that we can confirm not only that they understand, but that they are willing to fulfill those commitments and that they are feasible and possible for them. And of course, protect their airtime, protect the space for them to voice and to participate in the conversation if that is necessary. All right, so I invite here as a reflection your own self-observation of yourself as to which styles do you tend to resonate, the assertive, the compliance, and the withdrawals. How do you see that in other people? How do you see other people in mediation or outside of mediation positioning themselves as assertives or as compliance or as withdrawals? And how can we as mediators also adopt a balanced approach of all of this? Sometimes we have to be assertive as mediators. Sometimes we have to be compliant. We have to create the structure. Sometimes we have to be silent. We have to withdraw. So our own balanced posture of these three different styles can start modeling, a way of facing conflicts that is more balanced and more prone to resolution. All right, I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.